Hey everyone, welcome to our migration session. Are you having fun? Do you like the keynote? Awesome. So, if you like everything you saw in the keynote, and if you're eager to get all your content in Microsoft 365, you are in the right place. My name is Yogesh, and I'm a product manager in the OneDrive and SharePoint team. And with me, I have Visha from the Teams team and Tony from the Exchange team. Together, we'll walk you through with how you can migrate your content, mail, and conversations in Microsoft 365. And we'll leave enough time for us to interact and Q&A after the content. In the past 12 months, we have migrated more than 150 petabytes of data and more than 70 petabytes of data into mail across thousands of tenants. And when I say together, I really mean it. More than 40% of this content is migrated using our ISV tools and partners. And even for the migrations happening through our first-party tools, our managed service providers and system integrators who use the best of the tools available for our customers. And together, we help our customers migrate and modernize their workforce using Microsoft 365. So I want to start this session by extending a huge thank you to all our partners. Are any partners in the room? ISV partners, MSP, system integrators? Awesome. So kudos to all of you. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. The best place to start your migration journey is from the admin center. Many people do not know that there are free tools available right within the admin center as part of the tenant setup. And the good thing is, to start your migration journey, you don't need a fully licensed tenant. You could use a test tenant, a trial tenant, to get your journey started. The start is the real thing, right? The inertia. But in reality too, 70% of the migration efforts are spent in pre-migration, meaning the planning of your migration. And to plan your migration, you often don't need the fully licensed tenant. You can start exploring your content by connecting to whatever source you're migrating from, whether it is Yahoo or mail accounts, or whether it's Gmail, or cloud storage providers like G Drive, Box, Dropbox, or on-prem sources like network file shares and SharePoint server. And we'll walk through how you can easily start this journey using our admin center tools. We'll start this by walking through how you can migrate content to OneDrive and SharePoint. Migration Manager is our default tool within the admin center, which lets you migrate from on-prem sources like network file share and cloud sources like Box, Dropbox, and G Drive. And you can use SharePoint migration tool, which is SPMT, to let you migrate from SharePoint server. Both SharePoint migration tool and Migration Manager are built on the same underlying technology and the import APIs that support our ISV tools. And we hold ourselves accountable for the same best practices that we guide our ISV tools so that we can offer the optimal experience, optimal throughput, and minimize any bottlenecks that you may encounter as part of your migration. Enough talking. Let's walk through a quick demo of how you can use Migration Manager to migrate from a specific source. As I mentioned, you are in the admin center and you can choose the migration source for migrating your content into OneDrive and SharePoint. In this case, let's choose Google Workspace. The reason I choose Google Workspace is it's one of the more complex and involved scenarios. Many of you might be familiar migrating from on-prem sources because this scenario has been there for a while. But we are seeing more and more tenants moving from Google Workspace. Unlike Dropbox or Box, Google Workspace is a suite-wide migration, meaning you're not just migrating files from Drive, but you're also moving mailboxes. And Tony will cover some of that. And you're also moving other workloads. So let's jump into the Drive migration scenario. To make it easy, let's open our guided tour to explore what are the 4 steps you need to migrate from Google Drive to OneDrive and SharePoint. Typically, there are 4 steps to any migration for that matter. First thing is you connect to your source. In this case, I have already connected to the Google tenant through a few simple clicks of the OAuth flow, where I grant access for this Microsoft tenant to read from your Google tenant. The second thing is to add the drives. The drives are the individual drives for the users and the shared drives. And then you scan them, and we will walk through that. The second thing is to analyze your scan data through the reports. This is where you start planning. This is where you realize what and how much data you have, how dense it is, what data you will be migrating and not. Third step, and this is where you need to start thinking about purchasing licenses and forming your information architecture in your new environment. But this is where you start mapping your destinations. And finally, you schedule your batch and start migrating. As I mentioned, you have already connected to your source tenant, and that's why it's showing a connected option. But connecting is really easy. There are documents that can walk you through step by step on how you can connect to Google Drive. Once I connect, you will notice a few things here. First, a high-level overview of your drive, the total size of your tenant, the number of files and folders, and then you can get a list of all the drives here. Now, why does this information matter? If you go back to the concept of planning, the first thing your stakeholders will ask is how long it would take, right? And the duration of a migration is highly dependent on the size of the data. And that's why we recommend our customers, especially those coming from large Google tenants, to get an assessment on the size of their data. But that's only the first part of it, right? Now you need to understand how long it would take. You can use this simple calculator to input the fields here and get a quick estimate on how long it would take to migrate. So let's say I put 30 drives, 30 gigabytes of data, 23,000 files, and like that, I get a quick estimate. This is just a ballpark, but it is still useful, right? This is in minutes and not days, and that's a good news. Maybe you have a small talent, and that's actually a good thing. You can finish this over a weekend, or maybe it is 6 months, and that is also a good thing because now you know how long it's going to take. You can drill down further into the KPIs. Again, we're just scanning our source. We have not started migration, and this is where you will be spending a lot of your time, and it's all worth it. Often, migration is a great opportunity to declutter your environment, which means you want to move only the content that's active, it's highly collaborative, into OneDrive and SharePoint. So we give you a view of how old your data is and how it is distributed. This helps you decide how you can move your content either to OneDrive, SharePoint, or to cold storages like Azure, Blob, or SharePoint Archive. Okay. Another thing you will notice is you can organize this list based on your migration plan. We highly recommend taking incremental steps. If I'm an IT admin for Contoso, I don't want to do the whole migration at one attempt. I will start incrementally. And for that, we give you options to organize this view. So for now, I really feel good about personal drives. Shared drives, as many of you might know, a little bit messy. Permissions, hierarchies, all those jazz that goes with it. Let's start with personal drives, which map one-on-one to OneDrive. So easy to manage, I feel good about it. I can also filter this view by the size, exclude certain files which may not migrate because of path lengths. Okay, so I feel good about this view. Next thing you will notice, I have tagged this list as wave 1. Many times as IT admins, you want to organize your migration in waves. Wave 1 is all the people in my IT department. Wave 2, I'll move engineers. And finally, I will move the legal and the execs, where I want to be really good about it. So creating a tag is a great way to organize your batch. I have already scanned this list just for the sake of demo, but all you need to do is click and select the tasks and hit the scan. Scanning is usually fast. Within a few minutes, you get a quick overview of this. In fact, I started scan a few minutes before our demo and it is already completed. You can also drill deeper by downloading reports. The summary report gives you a quick snapshot, great artifact you can share with your stakeholders to set the expectation. The detailed review will give you more item-specific information which you can use to troubleshoot and identify issues. Recently, we introduced a sheet summary and a sheet detailed report. This helps you identify any issues you may encounter when you move from Google Sheets to Excel. Again, talk about planning. The more you know that you might have issues later, the better prepared you will be. All right, so I feel good about this. Now I'm ready to migrate, okay? And to do so, you need to move this list to the migrations tab. Think of this as the assembly line, right? You're done with one part of your assembly, now you're transitioning to the next one. The reason we want to separate is, A, it gives you the benefit of the assembly line where you're scanning something and then you're also migrating. But it also gives you flexibility in how you operate in these two workloads or workflows. So scanning is all about assessing the data, analyzing it, planning your migration. And migrations is all about mapping the destinations, setting the right permissions, scheduling at the right time. And we'll walk through the migration flow in a minute. But before we get there, I wanted to walk you through some of the filters that you can apply. Remember the decluttering part I mentioned where you could leave out the content you don't need to move to Microsoft 365. This is an opportunity for you where you could set some filters. This view is taking the default settings, which you can set at the project level, but you can always customize it as part of this move. Now, as an IT admin, I don't like to move EXEs. You could do that by setting a exclusion filter here. Similarly, I don't want to move folders that have an archive in them. These are the folders which are good candidates for cold storage. So I will apply that setting. And you can use the date filters to migrate only the data that has been modified or created in the last 5 years or whatever your retention policies are. Okay, so with these filters in place, I feel good about staging these tasks for the migrations. And this is where you start the phase 2 of your migration journey. Notice that the experience is now different. You are in the migrations tab. You have a slightly more accurate estimate on how long it would take. Behind the scenes, Migration Manager is using the data, the density of the data, your source, to give you the best estimate we can. And as you evolve, this estimate will also evolve with it. So you have a much more granular estimate. The next thing you will notice here, which is different from the previous one, is now you have destinations here. This is where you can start planning and purchasing your licenses if you haven't. Many times customers are already Microsoft customers. And all they need to do is map the destinations here. Migration Manager will auto-map destinations by best case name matching, but you can always set the destination. You can always set a destination through this UI. You can choose a OneDrive, SharePoint, or a team site as your destination, and it will try to load all the sites available for this particular tenant. And this might be a really big tenant, so it may take a while. While it loads that, I wanted to call out, there you go. You have a list of these sites. I will choose this site as the destination, and then I will choose the documents as the library to move all the data for this particular drive. This drive happens to have lots of form data. Now, Google Forms moves to Microsoft Forms as part of the Migration Manager experience, but you want the flexibility to move the form content, including the reports, to a different destination, maybe just the HR person who generated these surveys in the first place. You could do so by setting a separate destination for your forms within this particular drive. And now you will notice that this task has a destination and the migrate tab is lit up, meaning migrate action is lit up, meaning you can start migrating this task. What about bulk destination edits? You cannot go through hundreds or sometimes thousands of these drives and update destinations if the auto mapping didn't work. Well, you could do so by uploading a CSV. You don't have to start from the scratch. We give you a template you can download, and all you need to do then is update all the destinations. Customers often use a PowerShell script to apply destinations and then upload it back to a CSV, which they can then upload here. But that's how you bulk apply all the destinations. This is typically useful for shared drives when the auto mapping doesn't work, right? Your shared drive might have a completely different information architecture in your destination. Okay, so I feel good about this. Incremental migrations, right? So I'm going to do one migration at a time. So I'm going to hit migrate here. And once I hit migration, then it will start right away, or I can schedule it to a later time. The schedule option is great when you are ready to migrate your first substantial batch. And to optimize throughput, we recommend choosing off-peak hours like evenings and weekends where you get the maximum throughput. Because remember, when you're migrating, you're also taking bandwidth from the end users who are using the Microsoft 365 tenant. So you don't want to be a noisy neighbor, and this lets you choose a time where you can have an optimal throughput. Okay, so instead of scheduling, I will just go ahead and migrate. And as the migration continues, you can start generating reports. So summary report gives you a snapshot, detailed report gives you more insights on any failures that you could use to troubleshoot and fix issues as they come along. So that's migration. You started with connecting to Google, you took a scan, that was the first part of your migration, and the second part was to map destination and start migrating. So congratulations, just with a few clicks, you actually have migrated your first drive from Google to Microsoft, and now you feel confident to take on more of these migration batches and start copying them to OneDrive and SharePoint. Now, just when you're about to celebrate your victory, your company informs you that you have acquired another company who also happen to be on Google. No worries. Migration Manager lets you manage multiple migrations from the same source. Until now, we required you to disconnect from this experience and reconnect to another tenant. But recently, we introduced an ability to manage multiple migrations from the same source. And to get started, you just need to create a new project. In this case, I already created one, but you could create a new one. And then you go through the same flow where you connect to Google, you scan, you map destinations, and you migrate. So that was how you can use Migration Manager to migrate from Google Drive to OneDrive and SharePoint. For on-prem sources, you have a very similar experience for file share, for example. As you can see, we want to simplify the planning for you, and we give you rich insights so you can get an inventory of your source. In this case, it's not Google, it's your on-prem file share network. And the only difference here is instead of connecting to Google, you install an agent. As you can see, there is an agent here. You can install multiple agents. In fact, we recommend installing multiple agents to parallel execute your migration. We have seen customers installing up to 100, sometimes even more, to spread out their migration load across different agents. We also offer agent grouping, so you can have agent groups in North America, one in Europe, and so on, to really load balance in a very network intelligent way. So that was a quick overview of how you can migrate from on-prem sources. And as I mentioned, there are many other sources that you can pick and choose. The good news is you don't have to retrain yourself. You just pick this tool and start migrating because it's the same exact experience. All right, so let's go back to our flow. What we saw was with Migration Manager, you can easily connect, scan, and plan, and then finally migrate. And some of the recent features we are introducing includes adding additional scenarios to the Google Workspace. So I'll walk through a quick video here. We are introducing a new Google Workspace page where you can manage all the workloads, including Gmail, G Drive, and Google Groups, which is coming soon. And with the same experience, you can scan and you can troubleshoot issues. You can double click to understand more about this particular group. And then you can add additional groups as your source environment evolves. And Tony will walk through of how you can use a similar experience to migrate from Gmail, which is an upcoming functionality as well. And just like that, you can get a quick scan of your environment. If you're interested in a private preview, our team is interested in recruiting tenants to play with this Google Group Scan functionality. So use this QR code or use the AKA link. And to recap a few more additional features, in addition to groups, we will also have file versions. And we will be remediating the issues that you found as part of your scan for Google Sheets. And then we will have a ton of functionalities to scale and make your migrations more usable. So with that, I will hand over to Tony to walk us through with the Exchange Online migrations.
Hey, thank you, Yogesh. Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Good. Super thrilled to be here to be interacting with all of you. We are so thrilled that we also brought some of our amazing engineers with us all the way from Seattle, so that if you have any questions for us, you know where to find us. So Yogesh walked us through migrating contents. Now let's take a look at how we migrate mailboxes or mails. In today's experience, we have, as Yogesh mentioned, many free tools in the Microsoft Admin Center, and the case is the same for mails as well. However, today's experience is very elaborate, takes care of many, many edge case scenarios, and it works wonderfully well for large customers, large tenants who have thousands and thousands of mailboxes to migrate when you are trying to migrate to Microsoft 365 Exchange Online. And like Yogesh said, you may have multiple streams or waves or batches of migration. You may choose to migrate your HR first, or then you may choose to migrate your IT department, then your sales. So the concept of batches remain intact in today's mail migration experience as well. So let me walk you through that. You go to Admin Center, you find the migration pages, you go into mail migration. Before you reach this stage, you do some prerequisites like ensuring that mails can flow between your source and target at the same time, because if you are doing multiple batches of migrations, you might need much more time than a couple of days. There are some companies which might take a couple of months to finish their migrations, which means that you may have to keep using your source while some of your users are using your Microsoft 365 Exchange Online. So you do some prerequisites, which I'll briefly touch upon later. And once you do those steps, you come into the Admin Center and create your first batch. You add the batch, you name it, and then you select, okay, where are you migrating from? Remote move, staged, and cutover migrations. Those options are talking about the various options you have when you migrate from on-premise Exchange servers. Then if you are migrating across tenants, you have cross-tenant migration, then you have Google, and then you have any IMAP servers. Continuing with the theme of what Yogesh started with, let's look at how the Google migration happens today. You give the Admin Center permissions To access data from Google Admin Console, these are the various steps that you need to do that. And then once you set this up, you create your migration endpoint. This is essentially telling where to read data from and where to write it to. And then you go into the step of adding the list of users for this particular batch. You can import it from a CSV today. And remember, you will more than likely create your users beforehand in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem before you add it in the CSV file. And then you go into confirming, okay, here is the target to which I'm migrating to. You also have the additional options similar to drive migrations, where you can skip some folders, or you can migrate only certain folders that you want, decluttering, right? And then you can also choose what type of content you want to migrate. Do you want to migrate only mail? Fine. Do you want to migrate more than that? Even that works. And then you define who will want to be notified. When do you want to start? And then you start migrations. This is how you do a batch type migration today for mails. And once you start the batch, it'll go into a mode called syncing, which is essentially telling you that, hey, I have started, as in Microsoft Admin Center, have started copying data from your source to target. You have questions about how long it's going to take? Please see the URL. This presentation will also be available in the Hoover app. You can download it and go to this URL to get all the details. And then once this batch is complete, you click Complete Migration Batch, which is essentially telling that for this set of users, you have completed the migration. And that's how you do it. With experience that you just saw, so in the last 12 months, we migrated 22 million users. When I say we, all of us, ISVs, Microsoft, all of us together migrated 22 million users into Exchange Online from IMAP, from on-premises, and from Google Workspace. So what did we just saw? You do certain prerequisites before you start to ensure that business continuity is ensured. Then you set up the batch. Then you establish the connection between your source and also your target. Confirm which target are you writing to. And then you select the data type, the duration, and the include or exclude certain folders. And then you schedule. And then you repeat it over multiple batches. This works wonderfully well for large tenants who are migrating about tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users. So now you have seen the experience that's tailored for a large tenant. Do everybody need the same experience? Not necessarily. If you only have a couple of hundred users, you might need a much leaner, much simpler, less preparation, less prerequisites kind of experience. And we listened to all of you, and we have built that. So let me walk you through that. So this experience is coming soon, and you can start the same experience based on the number of users that you have. I'll talk about it in a while. And you can start it also from the Microsoft Admin Center. You start from Microsoft Admin Center. You give the details of your account so that we connect to your source to see how many users you have. And based on that, you get a custom experience. Okay, you get the necessary permissions. And then you'll be directed to install an app which now works as a conduit between the source and the target, so that all the prerequisites that you had to manually do earlier is now taken care for you automatically. You install the app. So by this step, you have already installed the app, and then you're confirming, okay, we give you the permissions, all the right permissions to the app to do the migrations. And then once that happens, so here is what you see. What you see is called mailbox summary. Remember, in the previous experience, you had to upload a list of users. You don't have to do that anymore. The system have automatically read the data, categorized it for you, and then have identified the different sizes of your mailboxes, and then it shows you what all to migrate. And see here, these options here, you have the various options, start migration. This option gets enabled if you select at least one of the mailboxes from the entire list that you have here. Whatever you see here among the 8, you see it here. If there are 40, you see the 40 here. If there's 1,000, you see it here. And you can select one or more mailboxes to migrate. And you go from there. And once you start the migration, there was a frame that was missed, which gives you the option to select folders and the durations. And now you can go back to the centralized landing page from where you can see the progress of other kinds of migrations like Drive or Mail. And then you come back here to see how the migration is progressing. You can see one of the mailboxes is synced. And then you continue the experience and see, hey, I have more stuff to migrate. Let me select all of that. And then I start migration for all of that as well. And then once it's all done, you can see them synced. And at that point, you'll get the option of complete migration enabled. And once you click complete migration, you will be given the options to do the post steps like changing your DNSMX records. And what happens when you change the DNSMX records is that your new emails will be flowing to the new target that you have just created. What's good with that? Your old source is no longer getting emails. But as we all know, DNS changes might take a couple of days, minutes to days to finish, to propagate across the internet, right? So we will continue to sync this for you for 72 hours, even after you have completed your whole migration, so that no email is left behind. So what did we just see? We saw the options. We saw the experience earlier about today's large tenant experience, and now we have simplified that to 4 steps. You connect, you scan, you plan, and then you migrate. So from a centralized dashboard for everything to migrate across multiple workloads, you now have a simple click-through migration workflow for mails. And we are not stopping there. We also have other features. Today, you can migrate permissions, delegates, rooms, resources, and tasks also from Gmail into Microsoft 365 via commandlets. The UI is coming soon. And then we have engineers here who created the amazing experience, amazing capability to migrate large mailboxes also from Google in automated fashion. UI is coming soon. And then we have listened to all of you. On-premise migration is an important feature for us. Migrating large on-premise mailboxes has been a challenge. We are resolving that also for you pretty soon. And you saw the experience. We need a feedback. We also need a partnership in partnering with us as our private preview cohorts, so that when we have this new experience, we want to show it to you and give you feedback. So please sign up using the QR code or the URL and sign up and give us your feedback. And with that, let me hand it over to Visha, who is going to walk us through conversations migrations. Thank you.
All right, thanks Tony and Yogesh for going over some of the simplified migrations. I think it's super cool to see. Now let's turn our focus to migrating conversations. Hi everyone, my name is Visha. I'm a product manager on Teams platform. And today I want to talk to you about some of our Teams Graph APIs, specifically import APIs. All right, so let's talk about the Graph import APIs. So what are import APIs? They are high throughput, high performing APIs that help you move messages into Teams. There are a lot of things that you can do with with import APIs today, and I want to go over some of the benefits and some of the value that you get. First is, we provide the ability to backdate messages. So in many cases, when you might be migrating or moving messages into Teams, you want to be able to retain the timestamp, the original timestamp, to get the context. And the primary goal for us is to maintain context and continuity. Everything that we are doing and the way we're designing the APIs and the features, that is really our kind of, North Star thinking. We provide you the ability to have backdated messages, so that keeps, the timestamp intact. We also try to keep the message structure intact. So when you move something, you see the message as if it never left. It was like a native message, which means that you can see the author, the timestamp, the reactions, and the specific details about the message, or even a reply chain, right? And so what that really does is it does not look like a foreign message. It actually just looks like it was always there. It was like native experience. There are a couple of more capabilities that we have, which is if you have rich content, you could have embedded links or you could have images. When you do the migration or when you move those messages using these APIs, we actually move that content as well. Not every data type is supported, and we are looking for feedback there. But for images and links, currently we do support that. And then finally, we have a dedicated import mode. And that, they're thinking there has been to isolate the migration experience and the challenges that can come with it with the end user experience. So team is generally locked when you are in migration mode. You complete you get the messages in with the import APIs. And then once it's done, we pull it out of the import mode. And then, end users can use it at any time. So that's how, what the APIs today do. Now let's go over, why do we want to use import APIs in the first place, right? So there might be some scenarios that are important. So I want to walk through some of the real world scenarios that are useful, or when import APIs become useful. One is mergers and acquisitions, right? A smaller company got acquired by a big company, and now they want to be able to consolidate their platforms, their communications or chat platforms. And it's obviously a good thing for them to be productive to be on the same platform. That is one important scenario. Another one is restoring messages. So, if there was a data loss and you want to be able to restore some of the messages or the important conversations that were lost, how do you get them back? And then there is a third scenario, which is migrating messages from another provider. So why would we want to migrate from another provider, right? We hear a lot of times from customers that in the same company, there might be 2 or more sometimes communications platforms, and that sometimes creates silos. So the goal is to bring everybody on the same chat platform so that, one, they are more productive. 2, it obviously fosters a more inclusive environment. And so that's an important and a popular scenario, and I want to focus some of our time today on how do we migrate messages and what's possible. So, like I said, when you are migrating messages into teams, our primary goal is context and continuity. We want to be able to make sure that you have historical context of every message. It's not, as opposed to, seeing a message dump in a file or another tab, and that way you lose context, right? So what you can do today is you can get all of the messages in the native experience, and that really helps you do everything that you do with a regular message, which is you can search. So you can use Teams' advanced search capabilities to be able to search any historical migrated message. You can see what in the right chronological order how the conversation actually happened. And at any point in time, you can go back to it. You have the original timestamp. You have the right structure. So it really feels like that message never left this particular platform, which is of immense value. I wanted to play a video for you because it's hard to visualize what an API can do. And we've put a little demo together to show what a migration scenario looks like. All right, so here again, we have Slack on one side, Teams on the other side. Imagine you have a marketing channel, a public channel. You have all these messages from whenever, right? It doesn't matter. You might have messages from 5 years ago. And here, you can use the import APIs to move all your messages, and you can see the links do work. We try to retain as much of the message structure as possible. You have the images, you even have the authors. If you map the users, right? The same person, you can see the message from the same person, which is so much of value, because when you search by that person, this message will show up. As opposed to if you append something, and you won't be able to find it from that author. Search is an amazing feature, right? Every time you have a conversation, you never remember about it, you want to be able to search. And so because they're treated as native messages, you can have that capability. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of flavor of what is possible. Now again, you can do all this or most of this using our import APIs today. So we do not have a first-party solution today, right? Just like Yogesh and Tony showed you about the different workloads that we have. So we don't have that today for teams. We have a lot of our partners actually who use the import APIs and build a migration solution on top of it. And I really want to thank all of the partners who use our APIs, and I'm sure they have a lot of feedback for us in terms of what's working and some pain points, and we would love to hear that. And towards the end of the session, we have a little sign up that you can do if you have feedback on our import APIs and you want to be able to make sure of the improvements you want to see. Our main goal is to have a holistic approach. So we have the APIs, but we don't have a UX to support that. So imagine if you have something where you can do this from the Microsoft Admin Center. And that would be a lot of value, right? Not just to our customers, but also to our partners, because migration is complex. And so this is something that does not exist today. We're working on, and we would love to get feedback and on our overall direction, and just to get insights from what kind of scenarios and use cases you might have. All right. So again, imagine you start from the homepage, just like you saw in the previous workloads, and you have a Teams migration option. And then a migration journey will look very similar to what the other workloads have, right? So this is again a very similar slide. You just saw all of the same steps except for one, which is specific to Slack. But the idea here is to have it consistent. Now, you may have been using the Microsoft Admin Center, so there will not be a lot of more learning to do. But the good news is that if you have not used it, it's still a very simplified experience. And so we really want to be able to minimize the cognitive load for you to do a migration, right? So the same 5 steps, user consent is the only one, and I'll go over some of them. So first is connection to Slack. You have to be able to establish the connection to the source. And then you move forward. And then we go to scan. So scan is like getting the state of the union, right? Which is, you try to get all of how your Slack instance looks like, and you want to be able to decide what you want to move and what you don't want to move. And then we move to user consents. This is a Slack-specific requirement where everything that's not a public channel message, you want to be able to grant consent from end users. And we want to use the same tool to help you track everything in one place and not go back and forth between tools. And then finally, we move to migrate. Here is where all of the prep work is done, and now our import APIs actually come into play, and you can actually use this to migrate one or multiple channels, and then import all the messages into Teams, right? So hopefully this gives you a flavor of what a migration experience might look like. Go to the next slide. And so just to wrap up, we went over what our import APIs can do today, what a Slack to Teams migration scenario might look like, what are some of the other scenarios that import APIs have, and specific to migration, some of the first-party tool that we are working on, and we would love to get feedback on. So hopefully, if you can, if you're interested, you can scan this QR code. It'll take you to a form just to provide your email, and then we would get in touch, right? We would love to hear from you about feedback and any improvements that you want to see, and we would always love to hear that. We also have a roundtable later in the day today. I know many people have signed up for that in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. That's an open-ended discussion where we can hear more about your, the things that you're trying to do with the APIs and generally on migration. So overall, I want to just, if there's one thing you take away from this session, it is that, starting a migration is easy. It's super easy. It's very simplified. Migration does not have to be a burden. And these are some really simple links that you can go to get started. So, specifically for M365 and the stuff that Tony went through for email migration.
Hi, good afternoon. So I was really intrigued by the, migrating from Slack to Teams. Do you have to have a Slack license to migrate, or can you be using the free version? Like you mentioned, like there's people that, can sometimes use Slack in a silo, and anyone can get Slack, right? Because there's a free
Right.
version.
Yep.
Is it possible to migrate without having a Slack license?
It is, yes, because the export happens on the Slack side. We try to export from there. So if you use their public API, which is what we plan to use, we would support regardless of license.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question. With like the free version, there's typically like you only get like the first 90 days of text. I guess if you have if you have the M365 license, would it be possible to get like all chat history from Slack, or it's whatever's available with the free version?
Yeah, it's a good question. We can double check when I know that only the free version has the 90-day because it all depends on what's available in the API. And I think it only will show maybe just to export. You can upgrade the tier and then get the messages. We can double check on that for that particular scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jomi.
Thank you. Is there any plans to, I love the tool. It's been great. I'm so happy you guys are putting more effort into new features for it. It's been great because it's been free, but I call it free like a puppy because you have to massage it. And do some things with
That
it.
is right.
So I have a lot of requests from end users looking for SharePoint to SharePoint inside the tenant migrations, and this doesn't do that. Is there any plans to integrate SharePoint to SharePoint?
Correct.
Teams to SharePoint, things like
Correct. So you're talking about the SharePoint Online to SharePoint Online,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, within
So
the tenant.
Within the tenant.
Or
This-
tenant to tenant. That'd be great if you could do that, but
Got it. So yeah, so tenant to tenant is a different session we have. I believe it's tomorrow.
Yes.
And they will talk you through all the tenant to tenant scenarios and likely the within tenant as well. The reason it's a separate because the technology is different. We are not moving bits there. We are only moving pointers, and we do it intentionally so that it's fast. It's lightning fast because you're not really moving bytes from one tenant to the other because they are in the Microsoft domain. So it's a very different treatment, and so that's why we keep it separate.
makes sense. Okay. So that includes both tenant to tenant and then within the tenant.
I think that's a good question to call out tomorrow.
Okay. I'll do that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks for the question. And again, as we move, Mike, I just wanted to extend thank you to all of you. We are the ones standing between you and lunch, so really appreciate all the patience.
Hey, thank you for that presentation. I actually have two questions for you. One is on change management. Do you have any resources or tools that you can point in our direction for making these transitions? And then second question is specifically on the Slack moving over to Teams. Is it possible to do it kind of half jobs of certain Slack items go to Teams, certain Slack items go somewhere else in Microsoft environment, for example, Viva?
Yeah, so I can take the first one and then Visha, you can answer the second one. For change management, again, that link, the ak.ms/migrate to M365 will point you the right resources. I specifically recommend reaching out to Fast Track. So they are a free service that you can benefit from if you're eligible. They support up to tenants who have licenses about 250 seats, I believe. And they can walk you through with some of the best practices and change management as well. Yeah.
I want to add to that. Don't worry about your user seat size. We have support for smaller size tenants as well. Reach out to your account manager. They'll put you in touch with the right people. We have an SMB nurturing team, small and medium business nurturing team, focusing on small companies. And we have the Fast Track that focus on large tenants. Your account manager will put you in touch with them, and they can help you do the adoption, training, train the trainers, change management, and all of that. So leverage that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would love to understand more of a scenario how you want to move partial content, but we try to think of workload by workload, right? But the foundation is still the same. So if you want to move partial content from Slack over to Teams, totally possible. With what we're doing, you should be able to do that. When it comes to a different tool like Viva, we just have to see which API to leverage there. Right? So we can definitely take that and see that on the roadmap. But I'd love to understand a little bit more about your scenario. Which kind of conversations are you want to be able to move to Viva Engage, I guess, right? And we have engineering as well here from our team who's working very hard on our migration. So they can also provide some technical insights. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. Thank you.
By the way, Admin Center, if you notice in the demo, there is a sidebar at the bottom which has a feedback option. If you leave your email and ask a question, it goes directly to us and we read those feedback messages individually and we reach out if you have a way to follow up with you. So feel free to use that as well.
More questions?
Some?
Sorry, I
Yeah.
kind of got in a little late because I had a work call to pick. But quick question. We migrate a lot of tenant to tenant, and I think that's the biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
How are you accommodating third-party apps? Because sometimes when we migrate, sometimes customers are like, hey, where are all these apps? The ones, and I think that's been a big thing. Also, another thing we found out that, of course, migrating, even if you use a third-party tool, service accounts don't work anymore. You have to use app profiles. So is app profile the most recommended way of migrating, creating an app profile from tenant to tenant? Whether if you're using I know we're only talking about Microsoft, but if you're even using a third-party tool, do you have any information about that?
Yeah, so the question is about cross-tenant migrations and preserving app profile, correct? So the cross-tenant specific session that you have tomorrow, I think it's a great place to get started. And they can answer all of the questions. As I said, the treatment is a little bit different with external migrations to cross-tenant, and I would rather have you talk to those experts there. Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone
Thank
for joining
you.
us today.
Thanks for joining
Have
us.
a great day.